one of my favorite references to God happens in the novel Catch-22. And Yossarian, the main character, is having an affair with an officer's wife. And what's brought them both together is that they're atheists. But as time goes on, they start having more and more trouble, and they get in this big argument. And the argument is that his conception of God, that he doesn't believe in, is so different. As of a God who's very cruel and heartless and all those other things. So she blurts out, well, the God you don't believe in is nothing at all like the God I don't believe in. The God I don't believe in is kind and merciful and just. And that's the end of it. There are many references to efforts to work around God issues through ethical culture. The founder certainly grew up in a God-fearing household, being the son of a Reformed Jewish rabbi. And even, I believe it's the ethical culture school at the Cornerstone. I think it says dedicated to the worship of the unknown God. I believe that's the quote. And then we have Arthur Dover spelling God with two O's, his Colloquy book that we were using just this morning. So I think there is a real tension that goes on for us, and I am kind of curious to see kind of how that can get played out in different ways in this current time that we have. I think historically there is much more of a sense that we are kind of looking to emerge out of a God-fearing time and into a new modernism. And if anything now, it seems like that has come back, and there's more of a sense that people have kind of let go of the modernism, at least the majority. And so I'm kind of wondering about the new version of God and how that might be a helpful thing for some kind of healing or reintegration of the population.
Well, the reason that this talk even makes sense to have at this point in time is that the old conceptions of God fail to explain what we see going on in our society. So we are already doing things that 300 and 400 years ago would have been considered God-like. We're no longer at a point in time where saying prayers will make the rain come. We now understand the weather. So more and more the old conceptions of God don't really fit. So in trying to bring people to some other conception of God, I think we begin by acknowledging that what they believe doesn't fit. I'm reminded of a terrific story about my father-in-law. When my mother-in-law was in the hospital, my father-in-law was visiting her, and there was a priest, roaming around the hospital paying visits to the patients. And they stopped in at my mother-in-law's room, and the priest said, "Shall we pray?" My father-in-law said, "No, absolutely not." The priest said, "Why? Don't you believe in prayer?" My father-in-law said, "Millions and millions and millions of people for years and years and years have been praying for peace, and yet we still have war." So all I'm doing is I'm saying, we have a concept of God that doesn't fit for us, that doesn't work, that doesn't explain the things we need God to explain. And I think more and more people are realizing that. So even among the true believers, there's tension. Because things continue to happen, we continue to grow and learn, and more of what we could explain through God, we now have science to explain. Does that answer your question?
Someone always puts God up there, though, no matter what you're thinking. There's always somebody's God.
But it's getting harder to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's getting hard for people in education to do it. And again, people, there are, as I said, I really discovered my ignorance when I went to prepare for this. There is no shortage out there of enlightened theologians. Now, unfortunately, there's No shortage, at least at this point, now of fundamentalists either. But it's a position that's getting, I think, harder and harder to contain.
Yeah. I just wanted to share with people a book that we recently discussed with our book discussion group, the Courtier and the Heretic. And it's about really two conceptions of God. One is the concept of Spinoza, who believed in an immanent God, and that is somewhat like your conception of a motive force in the universe. He didn't believe that God was separate from everything. It was more of a naturalistic God, and he believed the world was as it was because that was compatible with the nature of God, and it had to be that particular way. So, I mean, if we think of God as somehow embodying what the universe is like, maybe that's something we could live with. The other concept was that of Leibniz, who believed in more in the transcendental God, the God that the God is in a spiritual realm that is separate from our physical realm and somehow is able to act on that. But he never quite explained how you could both be separate from the world and still act on the world. That was always a little problem in that. But I mean, I think that's more the idea of the Christian God, this spirit up there. And somehow a spirit up there, is not something we really can believe in very much, I don't think, given the state of our scientific knowledge. But that's it. But if it's a spirit that inspires us to do different things, maybe that's a spirit that we can live with.
Well, I certainly like, based on what you said, the idea of a plurality of gods, different conceptions of God, because it serves to remind us that God is our creation. Not necessarily that we are God's creation. God is our creation. And all that we can know and understand is what we are capable of understanding. The founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, who, as I recently learned, was mentored by Felix Adler during his studies at Columbia, what he says and what the Reconstructionist Jews do is they don't believe in a supernatural concept of God. They believe that everything that we know about God, all of the holy books, all of everything that we know, was in some form or another created by humans. Now, having said that, they choose to engage in various ceremonies and traditions that seem to be praying to a God, but it's on a foundation of not really believing in a supernatural conception of God. I don't know that there's an easy way to reconcile among the true believers of a spiritual version of God. Other than to say that maybe that idea, maybe the two, while seeming incompatible on the surface, are two sides of the same thing. And this thing has many, many, many